Hi guys, this is Michael from Bridge Channel, and today this video will talk about AP Bio Unit 1 Chapter 3 about water. It's a little bit different order with Khan Academy or other studying sessions, but yeah, let's just jump in. So, let's start with the structure of water molecule. Well, as everyone knows, water molecules are made of hydrogen, and oxygen. That's the reason why it's H2O. And the big characteristic of water molecule is that water molecules are polar, and this polar characteristic makes them as a charged chemical. Then what is polar? So when a molecule forms a covalent bond, they become polar when the electronegativity of the elements that are my bad. I'll start again. When the difference of electronegativity of each elements that compose a molecule goes up. So when we look at the periodic table, the electronegativity of H is about 3.5. I mean, 2.1. My bad. 2.1. And for oxygen, it's 3.5. And this difference is really big, which makes the water polar. And when we say polar, in water, the hydrogen part usually gets relatively positive, and the oxygen part gets relatively negative. And this is the reason why water becomes a charged chemical, and this is also the reason why the oxygen attracts the hydrogen from other water molecule and they form a hydrogen bond. Let's dive into characteristic of water molecules. The first one will be cohesion. And cohesion, it's something about water and water sticking together. And this is due to the water's polarity and due to the tendency of forming hydrogen bonds. And the biggest example of cohesion would be the water droplets forming a spear shape. And this is because when the water molecules are falling, they try to stick together and they create a water droplet that looks as a spear. And the other big example would be surface tension, and this happens because the cohesive bonding resists the objects like penetrating, which means that going through the surface of water. And this also holds the water together, which makes it a little bit round shape on the top of cup when we fill it with water fully. And the second characteristic will be adhesion, and this talks about the water and other molecules. And adhesion happens due to the polarity of water and also the tendency of forming hydrogen bonds. And the biggest example would be the water droplets on plants that we can see on morning. And this happens because adhesion makes them stick to plant surface, which makes a little ball shape on the plants. And the second big example would be capillary reaction. And well, it's better to look up a video, but it basically happens when a really thin tube goes into the water, and the water gets sucked up to the tube, and it goes all the way up. And this usually happens because of both adhesion and cohesion, because adhesion causes the water to stick inside the tube, and cohesion causes the water to stick with each other, which makes a big chunk of water go straight up through the tube, and well, the water just goes up. And this usually happens inside the plant, and it's not that important, but it's better to search it up. Yeah, it's really surprising to watch a video about this. And the third characteristic of water would be the solvent. And when I say solvents, it means that it it functions well as a solvent. And this is because it can dissolve all, not all, but most of organic and disorganic substance with polar molecules. That was a bad explanation. I should have said it can dissolve organic, disorganic substances that contain polar molecules inside it. And how? Well, the polar attraction of water disrupts the intramolecular force that are inside the organic and disorganic substance, and that makes it easier to dissolve and get mixed up inside water. And, well, the three main things that use water as solvent are the metabolic reaction inside our body, where H2O dissolves substance inside the cell. The second one would be the diffusion, when substance goes through the cell walls, but they are still inside the water. And the transportation would be the third one, and it usually talking about sucrose transportation. The fourth characteristic of water would be the hydrophobic and philic. It's not the characteristic of water, but it's the characteristic of molecules and that are related to water. Related with. So hydrophilic, it means that it loves water. And these usually talk about polar molecules, since water goes together with polar molecules because water is charged material and a charged chemical, and the polar molecules are also charged chemical. And for example, it would be something like glucose. And the other example of hydrophilic chemicals would be ions such as cation and anions, and substances that H2O is easy to adhere to. And yeah, that's all for hydrophilic. And the second part will be hydrophobic, which means that they are afraid of water. Well, these hydrophobic chemicals, they are usually non-polar, which means that they are not charged chemicals, which also means that it's really hard to react with water because they're not polar. And these hydrophobic chemicals are usually something that are not charged as positive or negative, and these ones will be usually lipids and fats. And the biggest example for this one would be phospholipids. Because phospholipids, they look something like this. And the top part is hydrophilic, but the bottom part is hydrophobic. And the fifth characteristic of water would be the thermal parts. Well, this part usually talks about the specific heat capacity of water. And what we mean as specific heat capacity is the energy needed to heat up a substance 1 degree Celsius up, and when the substance is 1 gram. That was a poor explanation. Sorry. Specific heat capacity means the energy needed to heat up 1 gram of substance to heat up 1 degree Celsius of 1 gram of substance. And in water, it's 4.2 joules per Celsius times grams. And this specific heat capacity is relatively high between chemicals. And this allows H2O's temperature to stay stable. And this is the reason why when it's during morning, the sea is colder than the sand, and when it's during night, the sea is warmer than the sand. That happens because of the specific heat capacity of H2O. And this specific heat capacity also causes water to take away or consume a lot of energy when it evaporates or goes to fusion or other things. And this is also the reason why when you splash water near you during summer, it makes you feel a little bit cooler because the water sucks up the energy near you, which also means that it sucks up the heat near you, and that makes you feel cool. And this also happens opposite, which means that when water comes back from gas to liquid, they're supposed to exert heat outside. They're supposed to like let the heat go, which means that it loses energy. So to be clear about specific heat capacity, water requires a lot of energy to change their state, which causes their temperature to stay stable, and they also take up many energy for state change. So for thermal part, the specific heat capacitor is really high, which causes their temperature to be stable, and which also lets them take up a lot of energy or exert out a lot of energy when they are going through change in state. The last characteristic of water would be the coolant. It's something same as the thermal, but well, this usually talks about when they are inside an organism's body. When the temperature is really high, the proteins start to denature inside the organism, which can basically cause disease or malfunction in organism's body. And H2O helps the body temperature to be stable. And this is because of high specific heat capacity. Because if specific heat capacity is high, they require more energy to change their state, which means that they're stable. And for example, in leaves, the vaporization of H2O takes away the heat, which prevents the leaf from drying up or prevents the leaf from dying because of too much heat. And these are additional information for Unit 1 of AP Bio. The first information would be about catabolic and anabolic procedures. And when we talk about catabolic, it means breaking down. And when we talk about anabolic, we talk about producing something more. And it's really easy to find anabolic procedure around us because we usually call like the steroids that bodybuilders use, we usually call it as anabolic steroids, which means that they use it to produce more muscle and synthesize more muscle. And the second part is the dehydration synthesis and hydrolysis. And this is really important to know because dehydration synthesis means water is produced during the reaction, and hydrolysis means the water is used during the process. And dehydration synthesis are usually observed when they are forming macromolecules and ATP, and hydrolysis is usually seen when breaking down micromolecule and ATP. That was all for Chapter 3, the characteristic of water, and it was a little bit long. There were a little bit tricky parts, but well, if you have questions, leave in the comments, and thank you for listening today. I'll come back with the video for Unit 2. Thank you.